one.
Okay, we're back again here at allpointstv.com, and we're glad to see you out there. I'm glad to be back, as a matter of fact, from a month-long trip in Africa, and I was watching everything that was going on over here and paying attention to all of the news events that were taking place around the Trump trial, and we'll talk about some of that during the time we are here today. I want to thank all of you who stayed with us while I was gone. I saw some of the numbers in terms of the viewership. You were watching programs that we had pre-recorded before we left, and left on May the 3rd and came back on, should have been back on June the 4th. But I have to tell you something. You travel as one airline, which I'm not going to name, you will be staying overnight unexpectedly because they're not really playing their connections that well, and you're getting into the country 2 hours to make the next connection, and it takes that much time to get your bags off the plane. As you come back into the country, you have to classify, get your bags that you classified to fill the country, and get those renewed here as far as checking the bags back at the airport. By the time I did that, then the airplane that was 2 hours beyond the point of my arrival, that plane had departed and I had to be put up overnight. I know that happens every time. You know, Chicago is just not a very good uh, uh, port city as far as the efficiency of this airline in that city. I don't have that problem when I come in into New York, and so I think I came in one time from uh, it was in South Carolina, North Carolina. Didn't have that problem. But every time I come in the country to Chicago, come back to the country in Chicago. I have that problem every time, and each day that I come, every time I come in, I have to stay the day after the arrival date, and that throws me off the things I had had planned, because a lot of these things I plan before I leave, and then when I come back, I kind of have a schedule pretty much of what I'm supposed to do the week I arrive back in the country. A lot of things I have to catch up on, but that's again the bottleneck that I ran into. I won't mention the airline, but next time the airline you don't have this thing straightened out, I'm gonna have to mention you on the air. We can get more efficient because those tickets are costing a lot of money. We want we want some efficiency here. But I will say this about them. I will say this: they do put you up in a nice hotel, and those breakfasts that you have there at these places. Best Inn. I stayed at Best Western, and I don't know how they are otherwise. I have a timeshare, so I don't use hotels when I travel inside the country. But I will tell you that if you want to, the one I was in, the Best Inn, if it's like that everywhere all over the country, you're staying in a marquee motel, and they have a very good buffet kind of style breakfast, and it was just very accommodating. The beds were very nice. The rooms were nice. I was in almost like a suite. Those rooms are so large. So I have to say that, in criticizing the fact that I had to stay overnight, I do want to say something positive here. I want to come back on a positive note. And on a positive note, I have to say this: they did after some hesitation put me up overnight, and long for a lot of others on that plane. We were on that plane 2 hours while they were trying to depart, because a lot of airplanes were ahead of us. And by the time we got there to our runway and ready to take off, with the fuel to run down, and they had to go and refuel. And by the time they did that, then they just decided just to cancel the flight and then do it the next morning. But on a positive note, I would say that they did take care of the person on that plane, the whole group that were coming from Chicago to Flint. We were all put up overnight. Some left. Some got discouraged and didn't know they would put us up overnight, and they left the airport and found their own housing for that night, and we're back the next morning at 10. Those of us that stayed and argued our position that we're not paying for it. That's not our fault, and the airline's going to take some responsibility here. Those of us out making an argument wouldn't go away, and they finally got worn down. with our argument. But I will say this: they did do the right thing, and it was a nice overnight stay at the Best Western. I would recommend that if you have to go through Chicago, and chances are, if you're coming out of the country, you will be staying overnight or an extra night there because of the backup they have in that city. Hope you get it together, Chicago, because I like to use the Midwest as the city of departure, and Chicago is the closest to where I am for that event. But I have gone out of. I think what I'm going to do next time, because I go out of the country every year, I'm going to do next time going to rather than taking the whole flight. Sometimes you can arrange your ticket so you fly on one ticket. Multiple. You get multiple tickets at each place that the plane lands, but you basically can fly from Flint to your last place of demarcation, and I did that. But I think what I'm gonna do next time, I'm gonna get a flight from here to New York, and then from New York to Morocco, which I love. I love Morocco. It's a very, very nice and beautiful. Some very beautiful people there, and I might do that, and then from Morocco go to the other parts of where I'm going, which is in West Africa, where I spent the remainder of the month that I was out of the country. So anyway, I'm back now, and I'm very glad to be back home. This is my home, and I don't get confused when I travel about I'm going home, I'm going to Africa, I'm going home. Africa is not home. And those persons that are claiming that need to go there so that you can become more correct in what you're saying here, because a lot of you are making a lot of claims here that you would not make if you had traveled to some of the places where I went. And I will tell you that there are a lot of people in one of the more receptive places in Africa, which is Ghana, where I've been there, I think, twice. You can go there. There's a expatriate community of blacks in Ghana, about 4,000 blacks from the United States that are living there. And there was a report as I was leaving West Africa. There was a report that many of them are now heading back to the United States, because one of the things you're gonna find over there, as I found, and I found every time I've traveled, and I've been there. I think I've been to Africa now about I'm going to say about 16 times, and in that travel, you just have to realize that this romanticism that we can go back and pick up the pieces as if we never left. You can claim that. Some people try to claim that, but Clarence Walker's book called "We Can Never Go Home Again." I think you need to read that book. Those of you who have this romantic notion that somehow you're going to go back and find Kunta Kinte in Gambia. I went to Gambia, and I went to the village where Kunta Kinte where there was supposed to be this mythical figure. Kunta Kinte had come out of that place across the James River in Gambia. I've been to that site, and if you contend that that's the site where Kunta Kinte came out from the Jufere group, you're going to be very very amazed at what you find when you go and travel there. I would say this too. I want to, some people were asking in 1995 when they had the Million Man March, what happened to all that money they raised? Because you were paying $20 for this, $20 for that to get on the bus and go to Washington and then raise money when they got there. What happened to all that money? Well, some of it was spent in Gambia. There's a mosque where at the site of the Kunta Kinte, so-called Kunta Kinte celebration. I think it's a mythical story, but let's take it at face value. There's a Kunta Kinte that came out of Gambia. There was an ancestor of Alex Haley, who claimed that he was able to trace his roots from Tennessee all the way through the slave period back to the Jufere group in Gambia. You can claim that, and a lot of people would believe you. I'm too much of a historian to fall for those kinds of tricks. And that is, he didn't find anything of his ancestry in Gambia. And this idea, see, we just do not get it. Umar Johnson, you don't get it either. Umar Johnson is claiming that he is the prince of Pan-Africanism, and I have to tell Umar Johnson that this is nothing but frausterism, fraud. The man is a fraud. Pan-Africanism is an idea that is 60 years behind the times. The Pan-African movement would have been of some benefit and some concretizing of the continent around an idea, but that was during the colonial period. And now in the post-colonial period, the things that had brought about a unity, because all of Africa pretty much was under colonial rule, and you could claim the colonial presence as a unifying and rallying point. But now that is no longer the case, where Africa is now being ruled by African leaders and being ruled pretty much badly by those leaders, by the way. Where I was, for example, is one example of that. But you can go listen to Kwame Ture and formerly Stuart Carmichael and hear the same thing, where he says that the African leaders are the most backward bourgeoisie on the planet. And there are a lot of reasons for that, but he's exactly right in that analysis of that. These guys are riding around in Mercedes Benz and things like that and driving over ditches and that, because they're not putting money on the infrastructure. You can. So I can say this: you have to travel there to see it for yourself. But I've been there, and these tricks that they run in terms of these games that they're running on people about this romanticism about things, that you can say that to those who have not been there. I've been there too many different times, and I know the landscape very well. And I know the okie doke when I hear it, based upon that, because none of the things they're saying over here are bought into over there. You can go there and see it for yourself. They don't even buy into the term African American, because you are, in their eyes, a Black American. And this idea of African anything, the question there would be, based upon what lineage can you claim over there, and what language in Africa are you speaking? What tribal group are you talking about? You see, the Pan-African movement doesn't work anymore, because now that the colonialist arrangements have been removed, at least from a more direct and frontal placement, that is no longer useful as a rallying point to unify the different and disparaging groups in Africa, which are as disparaging and different than any other place on the earth, because Africa is very much diversified linguistically and otherwise. It's not a color issue in Africa. It is a tribal issue, where each group, a lot of groups, have been and are now bent upon maintaining their cultural heritage, and see any encroachment on the culture by other cultures as cultural imperialism, although all the people are over there are Black. But the imperialism is an ethnic imperialism. And to impose the ethnic group over another ethnic group will cause all kinds of problems. I saw that when I was in South Africa.
Well, look at the United Kingdom.
Good example of that.
Look at the United Kingdom. Okay, the outsider would see these people, the Scots, the Irish, the Welsh, the English, as being almost like interchangeable. Okay, they resemble each other. They're white, and all this, but they have severe, strong ties to each other, and strong animosity for the past wrongs and stuff like that. And the Welsh, both, the English, they're pushed off by the English, and then now when they come back into the land, they're called foreigners, and they've been there. They occupy that territory long before the English came in there. So it's like that happens everywhere. That everybody from the outside would examine and say, well, there's no difference. Well, there is a difference. You can't undo that.
Yeah, that's a point that Louis Gates makes. Why would it be any different in Africa than it is anywhere else in terms of people of different ethnic orientations being united and so on? Why would it be any different? It's very difficult to bring tribal differences together in a unity when there's not an obstacle pushing them together to unify them because there's a larger, they got, bigger fish to fry, and there's a larger issue they're dealing with. But what about when you remove that impediment that brings them all together, where they forget about their differences on the land space and deal with the occupying force? That's one thing to certainly bring people together. But look at what happened, for example, in the Congo, after you had Lumumba and Maurice Deshambe in the Congo. Once the Belgium, the Belgians were the ones that colonized the Congo, Leopold II. Once that had ended, look at what has happened in the Congo in the aftermath of that. Look at what happened in Rwanda in 1994 with the Hutus and the Tutsis. Look at I know you didn't like the book he wrote about it, talking about Keith Richburg. You didn't like the book he wrote about it in terms of the war between the Tutsis and the Hutus. But they didn't like when the author said in the book which is titled "Out of America." They didn't like this book, even the title of this book. Here's a person called an African American saying "Out of America" because he was there as a reporter for the Washington Post rather, and he was reporting about that war that went on between these two black groups, the Tutsis on the one hand and Hutus on the other hand, and they were using low tech, and they created genocide in Rwanda. And he was seeing heads floating down the Congo River, and he was saying, "There, but for the grace of God, goes I." In other words, that could very well have been him and his family if it had not been for the slave trade. What I didn't like about Keith Richburg was that he was making a point that nobody wants to recognize, certainly not going to recognize in California, and where they are talking about giving reparations to the descendants of slaves. They already started some of that nonsense over there in that ridiculous state. Already got a $70 billion deficit and shortfall in the treasury, and they're doing even more to damage the state even more so. But I used to think this. I used to think that they were doing that out of white guilt. I don't think that anymore. That is not why they're doing it. I've been thinking about a lot of things around this Trump case and some of the other things I've been watching. I can tell you this: they're not doing that out of white guilt. They're doing it because it's another divisional tool to keep the American people fighting each other. How are you going to feel? In fact, how are you going to feel guilty about something that you were not even born and you're not even there to do the damage that was done? Also, how can those who benefited from that suffering claim to be entitled to a payment for the suffering through which they benefited? And that's all the blacks in this country here. Because I tell you this, when you go there where I was in some of the boondocks of the continent. I went to some of the backwood areas. I didn't just stay in the city. I want to see it all. When I travel, I want to see everything the country has to offer. And I've been in some places. People have to go there to see that the people in other countries are not the problem. The politicians are the problem. You go in those countries, those people love each other. There's a love fest when you go into those countries. People like you. They have no animosity. That is not what that is about. This fighting is that of these politicians sicking people on each other. You can see it more clearly outside the country. I'll give you an example. When I was in Morocco, I'll tell you this. I was in Morocco 2 years ago, and I didn't have. I wanted to, tip people, and I didn't have the small bills, and I gave $100 bill, and told the workers in the restaurant to divide it among yourselves. It's about maybe 9 or 10 of them working there. I said, divide the money among yourselves. You all decide how you're going to split the money up. I got back to my seat where I was sitting to have what was a buffet style dinner. Before I knew it, everybody they had brought My plate was packed with all kind of desserts. They want to show some appreciation because that's the kind of people you meet when you travel. You're not this stuff they got going. This stuff they got going with these wars they got going. That's these politicians doing that. The people underneath that, you'd be surprised at how open and friendly and loving and open and caring these people are. That's all you meet over there. This other stuff that you run into where they might have over there, they may have a problem with the ethnic, and that, they don't really have the problem is not that they got a problem so much with the other ethnic group. The problem is that when it comes down to the resource divisions in the country, then that becomes a problem because how are you going to divide the resources up to which they all have a vested interest, a commercial interest? You start messing with the resources and you divvy it up to the point where you're favoring one group over another. Yeah, that could be a problem. That could be a big problem. But what I ran into was a lot of the camaraderie that you meet when you're traveling abroad, and people loved me when I was there, and I found that in every one of the travels that I have been on outside the country. I think I've been out of the country now about 16 times, maybe a little bit more than that. But each time I've gone out, I met new friends. I got some very good friends in Brussels, in Belgium. I got some very good friends in Belgium. I'm gonna have to go there one time and just spend a week of that month when I'm out of the country, right in Belgium. I got some very good friends in Belgium. They come when I tell them I'm coming through there. They, you'll see some of them. You'll see some of them at the airport, and they'll just because they value friendship. That's what I found, and I have a lot of friends in many of the West African countries. A lot of friends, some of them, many of them, that have welcomed me back, and when I left, were very sad to see me leave. But you will be surprised at how much camaraderie there is. But this Pan-African idea that you're talking about over here, I can tell you right now, don't go there with that, because that is not where they are. There's no Pan-African nothing in Africa. Umar Johnson, I'm talking to you. I know what you're doing. You were over at Kaloli Beach when I was there a couple of years ago. I knew you were there at Kaloli because I stayed there once before myself. And I will tell you that this idea that you're the prince of Pan-Africanism, as you're trying to be the inheritor of what Garvey was doing back in the 1920s, Garvey was a timepiece. Marcus Garvey from Jamaica was a timepiece, and he did his work during this time period. But for you to try to do that work right now, when the conditions in Africa have changed, all you're doing is running a fraud upon the people in this country. And I'm here to call you on it because I'm more familiar with the territory than you are, and I've been to Africa more times than you've been. And I can say this: nobody recognizes what you're doing over there that you're doing over here. You might be the Pan-American. Let's see, we would be the Pan-African American. Maybe you can claim that, but to say you're a Pan-African, the Pan-African idea is not anywhere in Africa today. You might have some small groups of the intelligentsia talking about it. I heard that at the University of Ghana at Accra in 2006, 2007. But that's a small discussion, a very small number of people to talk about it because of their nostalgia for the time when Kwame Nkrumah was the president of Ghana. And they'll talk about it over there during that time period because they were back there when Kwame Nkrumah took the idea from the Pan-African movement outside of Africa, was here, by the way, for 10 years in the United States from 35 to 45, and then went from 45 to 47 in England and met George Padmore in England, stayed there 2 years, and then was invited to come back to Ghana by J.B. Dunquois. I know all of the. I've sat with the scholars in Africa, and I know what they told me. And I will tell you that you're gonna get your feelings hurt if you go over there with a lot of this noise you're making over here. Omar Johnson cannot go to Africa and say what he says here. Nobody would understand it. I brought some pictures back on my show one day on this set that I took of people that as I was leaving out of Africa. There were people that were getting ready to go on the Hajj. And this person I traveled with was saying, as we were looking at the people at the airport, they were going to take a flight on the Ethiopian airline, and they were elderly people, mostly women, some few men, but mostly women, older women, and they were all dressed and draped and that. And my friend said, he mentioned, he said, I bet you there are not two people over there in all that group, because they were all dressed. You could tell they were all ready for the Hajj. And he said, I bet there are not two people over there that can afford this trip they're taking to Mecca. And of course, they're very poor people. They borrow and beg and do whatever to afford the trip, get money from the relatives and things like that. These are very poor people, but they want to go on the Hajj. They would not know what you're talking about if you start raising the issue of Pan-Africanism to them, nor is it important to them. They want to go to where the Prophet was, the Prophet of Islam is. That's what's important where I was. The Muslim influence. You have to keep in mind the Muslim influence is a major influence in West Africa. That's what they're talking about. They want to speak. They want to learn the Arabic language. They want to go to where the Prophet was. They want to go to the holy cities in Islam, which is Mecca and Medina, the two holiest cities in Islam. That's their calling, their life calling. That's what they want to do. Now, you can go over there and make a lot of these claims, but I will tell you, having been there 16 plus times, that you're going to get your feelings hurt, because look, Africa, you imagine in the back recesses of your mind that Africa stopped in the decolonization period of Africa. That Africa does not exist today. That the Pan-African movement in Africa is dead on arrival. If you take it over there, they would not understand it, and they're not practicing it nowhere. And I've been to a number of countries, can say that concretely, because I've asked the question, where have I gone? I've gone to a lot of countries. I've asked that question. What do you think about this term? I was talking to a government official over there this time. I asked, what did you think about this concept? I say that I will tell you, I say I'm an African American. What did you say about it? And this official told me what he had to say about it. It wasn't what I was saying. Not that I was saying that. I was bouncing the idea off of him to see his response to it. And his response was what I've seen everywhere else. Now, let me say something about what's happening over here, because while I was over there, I paid strict attention to what's going on over here. I was very much aware of what was happening in the United States, because they had a lot of programming the news over there, in terms of their satellite, they're getting satellite feeds from all over the world. Mostly Al Jazeera was one of the major networks, and some of the others, and they're getting a wide variety of news. It let me see that we are very restrained in the news we get in the United States. CNN, MSNBC, Newsmax, and Fox, and these stations, and they're all pretty much mouthing the same thing. We're getting the same news, just from different stations, and a different spin on the same stories, but the stories are the same. When I was over there, I was noticing over in places where I was, a variety of different news programs, and from different countries. And I will tell you this: everybody is paying attention to what's happening in the United States, and they are horrified by what they see. America is not looked at as a laughing stock. America is looked at with mockery, because people feel that they've been duped all these years to believing that they were following someone that believed in the democratic process and were practicing in their own country, and were giving this feed to the world, that they were the leaders of the free world. They don't believe that anymore. And they said that to my face, that scale. It's almost like the scales came from their eyes. They've been watching this with horror that a former president can be brought up on what they looked at and what I look at, because I was on the same page with the discussions about it, as fake charges. I'm a constitutional scholar. I'm better than Alan Dershowitz.
But yeah, okay. Now I'm thinking about this about the Trump trial. Everything that was prohibited by the Constitution, ex post facto laws, Bill of Attainder, seem to be employed here in this trial. Also that the judge gave the instruction to the jurors they don't have to come back with a unanimous verdict. I never heard of that. Have you?
John, I'd never heard of a lot of things in that trial. I'm still trying to figure out some of the things that the defense was doing as well. But that was certainly something that was very unique in this trial. Something else was unique. I have never seen before where the defense goes first in the closing remarks, and had to go up not only first in the closing remarks, but had to go up without even knowing what the charges were. Done. We still haven't found out what the violation of law was in this trial. And that's what Pearson was saying abroad. They were saying, what is President Trump? They call him President Trump, former President Trump. They call him President Trump over there. I don't think it's because they were saying they don't believe the outcome of the election in 2020, which is my doubt. But they were saying that President Trump, what is the actionable charge against the president of the United States? Well, Biden is the president of the United States, according to what they said, based on what they say occurred on November the 3rd of 2020. They claimed that on that date, the election that had started 3 months earlier matriculated over a period of time, and then this man got more votes than anybody's ever gotten in the history of running for president of the United States. They want us to believe that. Now, do I believe it? No, I don't believe it. Don't have to believe it, because it's impossible. You don't have to tell me about any of the other stuff that there were irregularities. I know that cannot happen. You can't have those numbers. I've already looked at this election over and over again from different vantage points, and you cannot concretize these numbers where an incumbent president, based upon the history of presidents in the United States, I would like to look at all of the elections of the president of the United States over a period of time. And there's not one example of where an incumbent president picked up more votes as an incumbent president and then lost the election, not a single time. That's one other abnormality that occurred in this election. 12 million more votes than he got in the previous election. And then the person that defeated him got more votes than any president in the history of the United States without even campaigning. Now, you can believe that if you want to. I have no problem with you believing it, but don't ask me to believe it. Don't ask me to believe either that in the aftermath of the election of 2016, where Donald Trump was a laughingstock, so he thought, they refused to see what the lying eyes were reporting to them, which was that Donald Trump was pulling these rallies. These folks are going to hear this man, and they were pushing them forward. And those crowds indicated where we went in each of those states, some of them being the contested states, the ones that were the purple, I call them purple states, because they're kind of like in between blue and red, and therefore how is it making an impression there. The question was then, are your lying eyes telling you something that is untrue? Are you reading your lying eyes and believing your lying eyes are telling you something that you may not want to accept, but it's true, but you're denying it? And what happened there in 2016, you could see it coming. I had predicted in 2016 that this election is not going to go well for those that are saying that Trump has no chance. Trump didn't think he had a chance. Who told him he had a chance? Melania told him, said, you're not gonna lose. He was talking about he's gonna lose. I did everything I could. I went around and I did all the speaking I could do. I didn't leave any stone unturned. He came to Michigan at 1 o'clock in the morning and spoke. A crowd was there to hear him in Big Rapids. Was it Big Rapids or Grand Rapids? Grand Rapids. And there was a crowd 1 o'clock in the morning waiting to hear him here. That's how I know he carried the state of Michigan. I don't care what they say. He carried the state of Michigan. I went around the state of Michigan and saw the signs. I didn't see one Biden sign nowhere. I heard the senator from the state saying that she went to the UAW hall to speak about Biden and rather to vote for Biden, and they didn't want to hear about Biden. They want to hear about Donald Trump. I know she was shocked to find out that Trump had lost Michigan because she didn't think he was going to lose based upon what she had found out there in the field. I saw the numbers myself. I saw the signs myself, and I know he did not lose this state. This state was taken from like some of the others were.
Well, remember
the election was stolen, as they have stolen many elections in this country.
Remember when Biden was here in Michigan at an auto plant, and some auto worker was on line. And he was kept questioning to Biden, and Biden said, sputtered out, "I don't work for you." So I mean that devastated the vote from the unions right there. I think it had some of them are diehards. I mean they're like I don't know. They just basically they could see the worst thing that the Democrats could do, and they'd still have to try to find a way of justifying it because they're so seriously tied to that party. But I mean, I think that undid a lot of gain is that the Democrats who worked over the years to gain in the labor amongst the labor unions, and I think that was just basically deflated it, defeated it, but they still some people still cling to this Democrat Party union union leaders connections. I don't understand.
Yeah, they do. The leadership does, but you know what the rank and file members are clinging to? Their paycheck. And there's a disconnect between the leadership, which is of course paid off by the rulers. The rulers make sure that the leaders in these different organizations are well fed and well taken care of, but the rank and file have to depend upon their paycheck. And so there's a disconnect between the two in terms of the UAW leadership and the membership. There's a disconnect going on there. And that's what Stabenow ran into. She ran into the disconnect when she went there thinking that because the leadership was supporting Biden, that she's going to find that that's also true of the rank and file, and got in there and got her feelings hurt because they were supporting the one that had ensured their jobs, brought their jobs back, because he's telling the automotive companies, if you take your jobs outside the confines of the United States, you carry them outside these borders if you want to, but they're going to pay 100% tax on importing those cars back in the United States and make the tax prohibitive where they cannot, in fact, do that.
What do you think? Okay, the libertarians, and I'm a libertarian, but one thing I kind of diverge from them on is they don't want to see, customs, and they don't want to see, tariffs. And I'm thinking that's according to our Constitution, which they claim they're always tied to the Constitution. The libertarians. That's how we're supposed to raise the funds to run the government is through tariffs and customs. So I don't know. So I guess they're okay with high taxation amongst the citizenry to support these ever growing bureaucracies.
We had a second war in this country over that proposition of the import tax. We had that's we call it here the Civil War. This was a tax war, and the tax war had a different element to it, different than it was in the War of 1776. This tax war in 1861 to 1865 was a tariff war. And a book, there's a very good book. I have documentation what I say, and I don't like to say anything with my documentation. There's a very good book to read. I wish that some of these professors would read it. It's called Daylight Robbery. And that book goes into very good detail about what this war was really about. Person talking about this war, about slavery and Lincoln freeing the slave. You see, look, you have to get out of here and talk to me about that, because that's so far, that is almost the same kind of mental derangement that I read last night. I came back in this country from a very sane place. They didn't have anything, but they were very sane. The country was very safe. I came back here, and the first thing I read when I get back here was some of this insanity, where the first headline I read was that over in Maryland, the headline was that somebody, a male, had won Miss Maryland USA. A male won Miss Maryland USA. That's the first thing I read. I said, I'm back in my country again, where the crazes are. None of that going. For 1 month, I got away from that. I didn't. None of that. I was trying to find out what's going on here with Donald Trump, and they were watching what was going on with Donald Trump. We had very good discussions about it. But I come back here, and the first thing I read was when a man hiding that he's a male behind this gender nonsense. When I say a man, I'm talking about a person that biologically not have children. You understand that? Men cannot have children. They have biological differences. And nature didn't ask for permission to make it a matter of your perception of it. Nature dictates it and has not asked for permission to do so. And you can't change it by saying that you don't think that you are that. You are that biologically assigned to you at birth, and there's nothing you can do about it. Men cannot have children. And I said this is my post today. And if you say men can't have children, you're crazy. Let's go to the next topic. There's nothing to discuss. And people are talking about, you got women over there that have to stand on the sideline and cannot win a contest that was opened up and made for women to compete against other women. Now they're competing against women and men in the pageant. They already got run off the swimming pool as they threw the towel in because they weren't able to go in the gym and compete with persons that are developing muscles by where you have to flex in order to win the event. So they went over here where there's a softer competition. Went over there and started competing with women, threw the towel in and went and threw it into the women's locker room. That's what they did. And now they're telling them they can't run in the pageant that's open, that's supposed to be for women to run against other women, the most beautiful one chosen by the judges. Then they got to choose women and men in a woman's pageant. I was away. I was away from that for a month. None of that's going on outside, not in any country I was in. I will tell you this, in the countries I was in, no man will run in an election that is set aside for women in any country I've been in what they call the third world. The first, as if there's a first, second, and third world of all the people in the world breathing the same air and living in the same time period. So first, second, and third world, as if they're dimensions of the world. There's no first, second, and third world.
Like years ago, people with anorexia nervosa and bulimia and stuff like that. That's the first world. You have to have excess in whole life so you can decide that's an option. I've gained too much weight, so I'm going to stop eating. People in other countries oh man, I can hardly wait to have a meal. People are like, oh no, I'm going to starve myself. That's just so bizarre.
John, that is point number one. Ain't nobody over there in where I was, and I haven't been anywhere so far, where people are trying to do a Jenny Craig. Now you might be doing some Chris Christie. That might be something you want to consider, because I tell you this: we're not elected any more fat presidents. Now you might have to do you may have to do something here that may get you in trouble, and that is the thing that got Donald Trump in trouble, which is that Donald Trump did something to try to influence the election. But you know something? Trying to influence an election, listen to me very close here. Trying to influence an election, there is no violation of law here.
I'm hearing that with the influence. I said, they're running for office. Isn't that what they're supposed to be doing? Is influence?
You're not trying to influence the election. What you doing then? Running to lose? You're running to influence the election. They're saying, well, he pays Stormy Daniels. This is what we're discussing over there in Africa. I was over there we had some town hall meetings in Africa. And this friend I had more than I did. He was gone every day. I guess he's running to this one place. I won't call the name out, but he was running to this one place every day. He was gone, and early in the morning, he loved going there because he is holding a choir service. He's very knowledgeable about what's going on, and people loved him over there because he is knowledgeable, and he was raising this question about, what crime is it for Trump to have paid Stormy Daniels money? They call it. They make it sound so bad. Paid her hush money. Okay, Stormy Daniels has every right to sell her story to the National Enquirer if they do a high bid. Donald Trump has as much right to pay her not to tell a story, and they're competing in the marketplace, and the marketplace will determine which of the two places that her voice goes into. And if he has paid her not to tell the story because it will damage his political career, then he has the right to do that. Just as she has the right to sell a story if the other person pays up and ante up more money. Where is the crime here, Merchant?
No, yeah,
Tell me what the crime was you were charging Trump with in your court, where he's convicted 34 times, 34 felonies in your court because you are a corrupt judge.
yeah. The other thing is too, I'd like to know this. The 8 years of Clinton administration, Bill Clinton, I mean, not Hillary's. They the Democrats spent their time trying to convince the American public of what a president does in his personal life has no reflection or impact on what he does as a president. Now people got that because they just rolled with it. And now, no, but we're telling you that Trump did this. Aren't you concerned? See, they like, don't you know, you got done trying to beat us over the head of how this is not important. You convinced us.
Yeah.
Okay. So guess what? Even if he had banged this other woman, so what? If him and Melania got it worked out, I can't say anything about it. That's what you got done saying about that. But the Clintons, be consistent.
You know? Right. John, if Melania, the only person that is an issue with in terms, or should be an issue with, is in terms of how that affects Melania Trump, his wife. It's a personal matter. It's not a political matter. Politically, what I'm concerned about and what everybody else should be concerned about, I think, should be what kind of policies that this man is putting in place that will, in fact, move the country forward, or, in fact, not move the country forward and move in the direction it's going in right now under Biden. You look, they know, and I've been looking at this from abroad now, as well as looking at it here. They know that this court decision that was paid, that was rendered in Merchant's court. One Merchant, that's you. You gave instructions to the jury. I looked at it when I got back here. I couldn't find the kind of information I needed over there. The print media is not quite the same. But when I got back here, I made it a point to go and look at what the instructions were. What did this man say to the juror? And he led them to the end result that he sought in that trial. He didn't let Michael Cohen's attorney. Did you know Michael Cohen's lawyer wanted to testify in that trial about Michael Cohen and tell the court what Michael Cohen told him, which was that Donald Trump didn't have anything to do with the payoff of Stormy Daniels. Did you also know that what came out of that hearing where Michael Cohen was on the stand, that Michael Cohen had admitted the stolen money from the Trump organization? The man is not to be trusted, but they let his testimony in, but Merchant didn't let, I think his name is Costello, didn't let the lawyer information come in, who was told, according to his testimony, that Michael Cohen told him that Donald Trump didn't have anything to do with the payoff of Stormy Daniels. But let's say that he did have something to do with it. The question there is, so what? He didn't want her to tell a story. He was willing to pay her not to tell a story. What's the violation here? Well, you say, well, he's trying to influence the election. Okay, good. Donald Trump dyes his hair. You understand that? I think he has that hair on top of his head. I've been watching that go in different styles and things like that. I saw a big part in it where you can see the skin of I think there's a big wig that's glued up there. He's trying to influence the election by dyeing his hair and putting a wig on his head. I think Donald Trump is not that hair up there. Tucker Carlson, I think that's a wig you're wearing. I'm not one to gossip, but that's what anything you can do to influence the election that is not against the law. such as some of the violations that are written in stone in terms of the person giving money to campaigns out of the where the restrictions placed on and things of that sort. That you may be able to make a case there, but you can't make a case that a man does not want stories coming out about some things that will hurt his campaign. If you're willing to pay that, and she's willing to make a deal in terms of not coming forward with it, you make a deal, and the only court involvement is that if you make a ruling in a contract and later on the contract is violated, then it's action in the court of law because the contract is sacrosanct. Two parties can agree. They're 18 years of age. I think Stormy Daniels, wouldn't she be more than 18 years old? You can't say there's a violation. And I tell you what they never did in that court case is I was watching it abroad, but also coming back to look at it once I got back here. I got back here Wednesday, I think it was. I started looking at this because I couldn't get everything I needed over there. So when I got back here, I started to look at some things I missed over there because they don't have a lot of written text. And I missed a lot of the written things about the trial. I got it when I got back here. And I've been studying it a long hours ever since I got back into the country, after I got back really from Chicago overnight. Because I was at the airport most of the time there, and then I had to spend the time in the Best Western motel. But I will tell you, when I get back to Flint, I was very much about, let me look and see what I missed to make sure that I'm able to be coherent on every aspect of what happened in Merchant's court. And I will tell you that Merchant is a pariah, both outside the country, and he's certainly a pariah to me in the country, because the man, this is not what the court is set up to do. If you have a person that can be brought to trial for things he does, which is what the court should do, mete out justice to those that have violated the law. That's what the court should do. We want accountability. So when you violate the law should not be a matter of whether or not the person would be charged based upon who the person is or the nature of the crime that's been committed, but the certainty of the enforcement of the law should be what we should expect. Violate the law, the accountability is automatic. This is what the law calls for. You didn't do it. Here are the penalties for it. This should be a cut and dried situation, but that's not how we're doing it here.
Another thing is too, I don't know if you found out about it until today, but one of the jurors in that case actually was on Facebook posting the verdict of the case a day before the verdict was actually delivered. And Merchant had to bring that up, the judge in this case, which I probably think was very painful for him because he did everything he could to help his buddies in the Democratic Party.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, here you got every turn of this it's got. I mean, I don't tell anybody who has any. I don't care. If I didn't like Trump, I mean, I didn't like OJ, but I thought that there was in OJ's case, they didn't convict him of a felony charge of murders or 2 murders, but they then turned around and sued him for the civil right violations of Ron Coleman and Nicole. And I'm like, how they can do that when there's no conviction on the charge that actually would bring this to the case anyway, to the light anyway. So anyway, I mean, I didn't like OJ. I thought he was guilty. But anyway, yeah. So I'd speak out for anybody like this. I don't see how anybody who is supposed to have, because the thing is, you got to keep in mind, anything like this could be done to you. He had an amazing amount of resources, Donald Trump did, and he had great legal counsels and stuff like that. Still failed it, I guess. But just think how easy this government set against us, because they got our resources they can put around our neck to strangle us with. So I mean, that's the reason why I have a big issue with how people being railroaded, and that's what he was railroaded.
Yeah, John, I'll tell you this. I'm like you in that regard. I think that Joe Biden. This is what I think Mark Levine was saying. I think Joe Biden should be tried for treason, but I must tell you this: there is a process that has to be carried out in order to bring that about. And if you don't, in fact, engage the procedure that is in fact mandated by the Constitution, it cannot be brought up on charges once he leaves office. You got to do this while he is in office. And I said that for Trump, and that's also true of Biden. You have to understand the Constitution of the United States here, and I understand it better than anybody in the country. There's no scholar in this country on this level. Ellen Dershowitz, you're not in this ballpark. And I call their names out. Have you noticed they never respond? You see, I'm not on television because the things they're saying on TV, they can say it on television, but they cannot say it here. And they know they can't say it here. We on Rumble together. And Ellen Dershowitz, you would not say to me what you're saying on TV. Lawrence Tribe, that also you certainly won't get away with that, with what you're saying, because you're really off the rail. You're way off the rail. And Jonathan Turley is an apologist for the establishment. That's why they have him on TV so much. This man's on TV every time you look up. He's got some comment that he's making about the frailties of the system in the case of Donald Trump. Some of the things that happen that should not be happening, but the system itself is fine. The system is not fine because of what they're not doing is following the Constitution of the United States. And if you're not following that, everything else is off. You cannot bring, I'm telling you this, all you scholars, you cannot bring a president of the United States after he leaves office to trial for what he did when he was president of the United States, unless you have an impeachment and conviction. And why is that true? Because you got a separation of powers. You understand that? The separation of powers, where it's divided up so that the founders found a different way. This is the greatness of the founders of this country. They had tried to find another way of doing what they had done under the Articles of Confederation, and that is to assume control of the executive branch of government and the other branches of government, because they would go out of control, and they didn't even have under the Articles an executive branch of government. Only the legislative branch of government. Didn't even have a judiciary. Only the executive branch. Only the legislative branch. And that's why when they wrote the amendments, it says Congress. You see, that's what they were concentrating on, stopping Congress, because that's where all the power was of the document they were casting to a side and creating another document. They kept referring back to what Congress was not able to do, because Congress was everything in the article. That's why it's written the way it's written. You understand that? You scholars? I wish you would get on. It's not gonna go good. It's not gonna go good. I memorized it. In my training, I memorized the document. When I went before those professors to prove my scholarship, I had the document memorized, as I did in some other cases when I was defending the caucus I was over to the union on the state level. I knew it upside down and inside out. I had memorized the document. They couldn't tell me anything in that case. And one of the lawyers on the other side asked me when we got through, he said, "George, when are you going to take the bar exam?" Not bragging, that's what he said. But I'm telling you this, all you scholars that claim to be constitutional scholars, what you're saying here, I'm going to tell you right now, you don't know this document. You like Glenn Beck. Glenn Beck was saying that he had not read he called it the owner's manual. He said, you have to read the owner's manual. And I hadn't read it. He said, for 40 years, I had not read the owner's manual. Well, you didn't read the owner's manual. You've read the framer's manual. The owners the owners don't have any manual that they cater to. The law is not in a manual for them. They make it up as they go along. That's the problem. They make it up as they go along. There's no law that they are abiding by, that they're willing to bow down to, because they're broken away from underneath the document and the violation of it. They know, okay, they know that what they did, and Merchant knows what he did in that court. Merchant knows that what he did in that court is not going to stand up on appeal. They don't care about that. They don't care. They know there were violations. You can't put the defense to go up to make final arguments and done what the charge is. They're trying to make an argument at first, going first without being told what the arguments are. You can't do that and reverse and then not tell them what the crime is. We don't even know today what the crime is. You know why? Because merchants still trying to find a crime. Evan Bragg, another a Soros merchant, as is Fonu Willis and Letitia James. These are nothing other than George Soros acolytes. These people were sick though on Trump to stop Trump. And go look at their bank accounts and ask where did all that money come from on these salaries of $100,000 a year. Where does Evan Bragg get all the stuff that he got? This boat, these homes, these cars. This man is living in luxury. I think he has something like one person said one of them got $42 million. Where did that money come from outside of George Soros's bankrolling these shysters? No, Merchant knows that he's going to be overturned, but that's not the point. The point is not that they were running a court where they were concerned about whether the decision that were made would stand in the appeal process or not. What they were doing was damaging Donald Trump so that when he run, the people would run away from him because they can then use the fact that he's an accused felon. And by the time they exonerate him in the appeal level, the popular court, the people's court, where the voters are, would have made the determination they would not be present. I will say this as I get off the air. Go back and look at what Harry Reid said to Mitt Romney. When they said after the election was over in 2012, they said, well, Harry Reid, you were the Speaker of the House. Look at what you said about Romney, and all this now is coming out is not true. And Harry Reid's answer was he didn't win, did he? Because winning is everything in politics. The rest of it falls by the sideline. All they want to do is win in November the 5th. And the people have got to stand up and make sure they turn the hordes back. This time, this is your last chance to do so. Okay, back from Africa, paid attention to everything while I was over there. I'm fired up. I came back to fight. Okay, folks. See you next week. Until next week, I want you to follow your dream. If you don't follow your dream, you never know what's on the other side of the rainbow.